In 2025, I found myself investigating some truly horrifying animal encounters. I still remember the wildest, most intense moments of that year. It's difficult to forget the chilling details of what I uncovered. One case, in particular, still haunts me. October 7th, 2016, began like any other day in Wildwood Heights, an affluent neighborhood in Boulder, Colorado. The sun hadn't yet risen, and the streets were quiet. This upscale residential area, built just 5 years prior, sat right on the edge of the Rocky Mountain foothills, with winding streets and modern homes backing onto open space, corridors for wildlife. Lisa Hartwell, a 33-year-old marketing coordinator, started her daily 5 a.m. jog. She'd moved to Wildwood Heights for its promise of mountain living combined with urban conveniences. A dedicated fitness enthusiast, she maintained a strict exercise schedule, often rising before dawn to complete her 5-mile run. This morning routine was sacred to her, a peaceful time to clear her mind and enjoy the crisp mountain air. That autumn had been unusually dry, with drought conditions persisting longer than usual. Wildlife officials had issued warnings about increased animal activity in residential areas. Deer, elk, and their predators were venturing closer to human settlements in search of water. Several residents had reported mountain lion sightings, including tracks in backyards, and a large cat near the community's retention pond. Lisa had heard these warnings, but dismissed them as typical concerns for mountain living. She continued her runs, confident that her familiar neighborhood streets were safe. Mountain lions, also known as cougars or pumas, are North America's second-largest wildcat species. Adult males can weigh between 115 and 220 pounds. These powerful predators are perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain, possessing incredible stealth, speed, and jumping ability. They can leap vertically up to 15 feet and horizontally up to 45 feet. Mountain lions are primarily ambush hunters, relying on surprise attacks, typically targeting the neck and spine of their prey to deliver quick, fatal bites. As Lisa jogged through the pre-dawn darkness, she was completely unaware that a 140-pound male mountain lion had been stalking a mule deer through a drainage culvert beneath the street she was approaching. Lisa's approach disrupted the hunt, startling both the deer and the mountain lion. The deer bolted across the street, disappearing into the darkness, leaving the frustrated predator crouched in the shadows of the concrete drainage opening. The attack came without warning. As Lisa passed within 10 feet of the culvert, the mountain lion exploded from the shadows with incredible speed, covering the distance in a single, powerful leap. His massive front paws struck Lisa between the shoulder blades with devastating force, sending her crashing face first onto the asphalt. His weight drove her to the ground. Lisa's attempts to scream were cut short as the mountain lion's powerful jaws clamped down on the back of her neck, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae with crushing force. His razor-sharp claws raked across Lisa's back and shoulders, opening deep gashes that severed major blood vessels and caused massive tissue damage. The 140-pound cat used his incredible strength to drag Lisa's body across the asphalt and down into the concrete culvert, where the darkness and confined space would provide protection while he fed. Lisa's body was recovered 3 hours later by a joint team of police officers and Colorado Parks and wildlife personnel. The mountain lion had abandoned his kill when the search teams approached, retreating further into the drainage network that connected to the natural creek system beyond the neighborhood. Lisa had died from massive trauma to her neck and spine. The mountain lion's killing bite proved instantly fatal. The investigation revealed that Lisa had inadvertently interrupted the mountain lion's hunt, triggering the attack that cost her life. The mountain lion was tracked and euthanized the following day, after being located in the foothills above the neighborhood. The following year, on August 19, 2017, Felicity Grant arrived at Boulder County Open Space in Colorado. This vast wilderness area is known for its rugged terrain and diverse wildlife population. He began tracking Felicity's movement through the forest. The cougar stalked Felicity along the ridge above the trail, using rocks and trees to remain hidden while closing the distance. As Felicity rounded a sharp bend, the mountain lion positioned itself on a large boulder about 15 feet above the path. When Felicity passed below the boulder, completely unaware because of her loud music and her arrogant belief that her fitness made her invulnerable, the mountain lion launched itself in a devastating aerial attack. The predator struck Felicity from behind with tremendous force, his powerful hind claws raking down her back, while his front paws wrapped around her shoulders and neck. The mountain lion's 4-inch canine teeth immediately found their target, clamping down on the back of Felicity's neck with surgical precision. Mountain lions kill their prey through a specific technique that targets the cervical vertebrae, and this male executed the attack with deadly efficiency. His powerful jaws applied crushing press of over 400 pounds per square inch directly to Felicity's spinal cord, severing the connection between her brain and body instantly. The bite penetrated deep into the neck muscles and fractured the vertebrae, causing immediate paralysis from the neck down. The cougar maintained his grip on Felicity's neck while using his powerful claws to secure his position. His hind legs continued raking down her spine and legs, opening deep wounds that bled profusely. Within 2 minutes, Felicity died from a combination of spinal cord severance, massive blood loss, and suffocation caused by the crushing press on her neck and throat. The mountain lion then began dragging her body off the main trail toward a secluded area where he could feed undisturbed. Felicity's body was discovered 3 days later by a search and rescue team organized when she failed to return. The discovery location and condition of the remains were consistent with a mountain lion attack and subsequent caching behavior. I remember another case, this one from December 3, 2014. The fluorescent lights of the county animal shelter cast harsh shadows across the rows of kennels. Jennifer Walsh, a 25-year-old veterinary student, moved between the cages with a determined stride, believing every animal deserved a second chance. As a weekend volunteer, Jennifer had a reputation for advocating for the shelter's most difficult cases. While others focused on friendly, adoptable dogs, she gravitated toward the aggressive ones, the animals marked with red cards indicating immediate euthanization. The dog that would cost Jennifer her life was Diesel, a 75-pound pit bull with a scarred muzzle and eyes that seemed to hold years of rage. He'd been surrendered after multiple bite incidents, including an attack on a neighbor's child requiring emergency surgery. The behavioral assessment was decisive. Too dangerous for adoption. Scheduled for euthanization on Monday, Jennifer had been watching Diesel for 3 days, looking for signs of the gentle soul she believed existed beneath his aggressive exterior. She'd seen him pace restlessly, heard him growl at anyone who approached, watched him destroy every toy placed in his cage. But she'd also noticed what she interpreted as vulnerability, moments when he pressed against the back wall, briefly softening when he thought no one was watching. The shelter's protocol was clear. Dogs like Diesel were never to be handled alone. Staff with years of experience and proper equipment were required for any interaction with red card animals. But Jennifer had convinced herself that Diesel's aggression was fear-based, that what he needed was one-on-one attention. On that December afternoon, with most staff busy and senior volunteers handling other duties, Jennifer made the decision that would cost her her life. She approached Diesel. There's a case that haunts me. It's the story of Jennifer, a young woman with dreams of becoming a veterinarian. Her life ended with a single, brutal bite. It happened in an isolation room, a small, windowless space meant for behavioral evaluations. I remember reading the details of that room. 8 by 10 feet, concrete walls, a metal folding chair. Designed for safety, yes, but also offering nowhere to run. Jennifer's story unfolded on April 11th, 2016, at the Detroit Dog Rescue. She approached Diesel's kennel with a slip lead, unaware of the danger she was walking into. Diesel's reaction was immediate. Lips pulled back, yellowed teeth exposed, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling from his chest. But she misinterpreted these signs, seeing fear where there was only aggression. The moment the kennel door opened, Diesel seemed to shift, calculating. He assessed Jennifer's position, a brief hesitation that gave her a false sense of confidence. She slipped the lead around his neck, guiding him toward the isolation room. Once inside, she removed the lead, believing freedom would help him relax. For several minutes, Diesel stood rigid, his eyes never leaving Jennifer's face. She sat in the chair, talking to him gently, unaware she was being evaluated by a predator. The attack came when Jennifer stood, taking a step toward Diesel, her hand extended in what she thought was a peaceful gesture. To Diesel, it was a threat. His 75 pounds launched across the room with explosive force, his jaws targeting Jennifer's throat with deadly precision. Her scream was cut short as Diesel's teeth sank deep into her neck, severing major blood vessels in a single bite. His jaws locked, his powerful neck muscles shaking violently, tearing through tissue and bone. Blood sprayed across the concrete walls as Jennifer's struggles weakened. Other volunteers heard her scream and rushed to the door, but it was locked from the inside. By the time they got in, Jennifer lay motionless on the floor, her life draining away in a pool of blood. Diesel stood over her, muzzle stained red, his eyes burning with aggression. Paramedics arrived, but it was too late. Jennifer was pronounced dead at the scene, her dream of becoming a veterinarian extinguished. Diesel was immediately sedated and euthanized. The investigation that followed revealed that Jennifer had violated multiple safety protocols, ignored clear warning signs, and placed herself in a situation that experienced professionals would have avoided. The shelter implemented new security measures, and Jennifer's death became a cautionary tale in veterinary schools. Her family established a scholarship in her name, but for students studying wildlife conservation, a final acknowledgement that some animals, no matter how much love they're shown, remain fundamentally dangerous. Then there was April 17th, 2018, and the humid Florida air hung heavy over the grounds of Sunshine Primate Sanctuary, a controversial facility that claimed to rescue primates while actually exploiting them for tourist photographs. The 20-acre property housed over 30 primates in substandard conditions, generating revenue through photo sessions that legitimate sanctuaries would never permit. The afternoon sun beat down on concrete encloses where gorillas, chimpanzees, and other primates paced restlessly behind inadequate barriers. With adult males weighing up to 400 pounds and possessing the strength of 10 grown men, these magnificent animals are highly intelligent and emotionally complex. But they're also territorial and can become extremely aggressive when they perceive threats to their domain. It's easy to forget how dangerous even seemingly calm animals can be. I've seen it time and again in my research. Creatures communicating through complex body language, able to shift from a peaceful demeanor to violent behavior in an instant. A gorilla's massive hands can grip with crushing force, its powerful jaws filled with sharp canine teeth ready to inflict severe wounds. I remember reading the story of Jessica, who approached a gorilla enclosure with her camera, hoping to capture the animal's intelligence and emotional depth. The gorilla, named King, appeared calm, sitting near the fence, observing the human visitors with what seemed like curiosity. Jessica started photographing him, excited about the conservation message she could share through these portraits. But then came the fatal moment. Jessica reached through the fence, wanting to touch King, believing that physical contact would create a more powerful image for her conservation advocacy. She misinterpreted the gorilla's calm demeanor as friendliness, failing to recognize the calculated patience of a territorial animal assessing potential threats. King's reaction was instantaneous and devastating. The moment Jessica's hand crossed the barrier, the 350-pound silverback grabbed her arm with crushing strength, pulling her against the chain-link fencing. Her scream filled the facility as King's grip tightened with bone-crushing force. Visitors tried to free her, but the gorilla's strength was far beyond human capability. King's other hand reached through the barrier, grabbing her head and shoulders, pulling her harder against the inadequate fencing. His territorial instincts drove him to continue the assault, his powerful hands inflicting devastating trauma to Jessica's head, neck, and arms. Her attempts to break free only seemed to increase King's aggression, as he interpreted her struggles as continued threats. Jessica's movements grew weaker, as massive blood loss and crushing injuries overwhelmed her body. King's grip never loosened as he continued to pull her against the barrier, his fury focused on eliminating what he perceived as an intrusion into his domain. Within minutes, Jessica's struggle ceased. The massive gorilla maintained his grip on her lifeless form, displaying threatening behavior toward anyone who approached the enclosure. Emergency responders arrived, but it was too late. The investigation revealed that the facility, Sunshine Primate Sanctuary, was an illegal roadside zoo, exploiting animals and visitors for profit, while providing inadequate safety measures and animal care. It was shut down, and King was transferred to an accredited facility with proper containment and enrichment programs. Jessica's death prompted enhanced regulations for facilities claiming to be animal sanctuaries and stricter enforcement of wildlife protection laws. Her family established a foundation supporting legitimate primate conservation efforts, ensuring that her genuine passion for animal welfare would continue through organizations that truly protect great apes. It reminds me of another incident that occurred on March 18, 2017, in an upscale neighborhood in Asheville, North Carolina. The Mountain View Estates development, built on the slopes of the Blue Ridge Mountains, was experiencing the first warm evening of spring. Maria Santos, a 41-year-old single mother and part-time dog walker, was making her evening rounds through the neighborhood's winding streets. She had been working as a professional dog walker for 3 years, building a loyal clientele among the affluent homeowners who appreciated her reliability and genuine love of animals. Maria's income from dog walking helped support her teenage daughter. The Mountain View Estates development had been carved out of pristine mountain forest, and recent construction had disrupted established animal movement patterns, forcing wildlife to seek new routes through residential areas. The North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission had issued warnings about increased bear activity, particularly as animals emerged from winter hibernation. Maria was aware of the warnings, but had never encountered any dangerous animals during her 3 years of walking dogs in the neighborhood. She carried pepper spray and had received training on wildlife encounters. On this particular evening, she was walking 3 large dogs when she noticed unusual activity near a row of garbage cans. Black bears are North America's most common bear species, and mother bears with cubs are extremely protective and will attack any perceived threat to their offspring. I'll never forget reading about Maria, a woman who encountered a 300-pound black bear and her cubs near some garbage cans. The details haunted me for days. It's a stark reminder of how quickly a seemingly normal morning walk can turn deadly. Bears, after all, have an incredible sense of smell. They're often drawn to residential areas by things like garbage and pet food. And when surprised, they can run up to 35 miles per hour. They possess the strength to break down doors, even overturn cars. Their claws and teeth, capable of inflicting devastating injuries, especially if they feel their cubs or territory are threatened. In Maria's case, as she approached that intersection, she saw the bear rummaging through its containers with her cubs nearby. The mother bear had torn open bags, feeding on discarded food. Maria, recognizing the danger, started backing away slowly. But then her dogs, agitated, began barking aggressively at the bears. That triggered the mother bear's protective instincts immediately. She perceived the barking as a direct threat to her cubs. She rose to her full height, making aggressive vocalizations, positioning herself between the dogs and her offspring. Maria tried to control the excited animals, retreat to a safe distance, but the dogs continued barking, only escalating the situation. The 300-pound mother bear charged toward Maria and the dogs with incredible speed, covering those 30 yards in just seconds. Maria, trying to run while holding 3 leashes, became entangled and fell hard onto the asphalt. The dogs scattered, leaving Maria vulnerable as the enraged bear approached. The mother bear's paws struck Maria's back and shoulders, crushing her against the pavement. Her jaws clamped down on Maria's head and neck, teeth puncturing through bone, severing vital arteries. Her attempts to protect herself were futile against an animal with so much more strength and weight. The bear's claws tore across Maria's torso and limbs, opening deep wounds. It was a methodical, brutal attack driven by maternal instincts. Maria's struggles grew weaker as trauma and blood loss overwhelmed her. Residents nearby heard the commotion, called 911, tried to scare the bear away. The mother bear eventually retreated with her cubs toward the forest, leaving Maria motionless. Paramedics arrived quickly, but couldn't save her. She died from massive head and neck trauma. The investigation revealed that improperly secured garbage had attracted the bear and her cubs, creating the conditions for that fatal encounter. Wildlife officials determined the bear had been acting defensively, protecting her offspring. The mother bear and cubs were relocated to a remote mountain area. Maria's death led to immediate changes in waste management protocols, including bear-proof garbage containers and new guidelines for refuge. The community also implemented an early warning system for wildlife sightings, requiring residents to remove potential attractants from their properties. Then there's the story of Rebecca Martinez on October 15, 2016. The Georgia sun was setting over her 10-acre property, casting long shadows across kennels and chain-link runs. The constant barking of 40 rescue dogs echoed across the land. It had become the soundtrack of her life. At 34, Rebecca had spent 8 years building her sanctuary, taking in dogs that other shelters wouldn't touch. The aggressive ones, the biters, the ones marked for euthanization. Her recent divorce had left her financially strained, emotionally isolated, with only her dogs for company on that remote property. Her neighbors had grown used to the noise, though some whispered concerns about the woman who seemed to care more about dangerous animals than her own safety. The case of Rebecca, a dedicated rescuer, is one that stays with me. She devoted herself to dogs that others had given up on, creating a sanctuary for them. But one evening, that sanctuary became a scene of unimaginable horror. Rebecca's daily feeding routine was always a risk, filling buckets with kibble while the dogs waited, tense with anticipation. She'd done it thousands of times, but this night felt different. The air charged. As she entered the enclosure, she slipped on the muddy ground, the buckets crashing down. Rex, one of the dogs she had saved, shifted. His eyes locked onto her, no longer seeing her as a savior, but as competition. The attack was sudden and brutal. Rex, all 90 pounds of him, slammed into her chest, his jaws tearing into her shoulder. Titan and Scar joined in, their pack instincts overwhelming any rehabilitation. For 10 minutes, the frenzy continued until Rebecca lay motionless, her body broken amidst the scattered kibble. Her body went undiscovered for 3 days, until a delivery driver arrived. Animal control found the dogs still in the enclosure, but no longer aggressive. Rex, Titan, and Scar were euthanized, along with 12 others deemed too dangerous. Rebecca's death led to new regulations for rescue operations, but for those who knew her, it was far too late. Another story, another place, but with a similar sense of unease. April 3rd, 2017. At the Thor Zoo Safari Park in France. The wolf sector, designed to mimic Yellowstone, seemed calm. Camille Morel, a fitness instructor from Versailles, was spending a weekend there. She was a creature of habit and booked the chalet to keep her running routine intact. The park's trails were considered safe, and she'd read the safety pamphlet. Her chalet overlooked the wolf sector, separated by natural barriers and double fences. Camille trusted the system. She planned a quick 2-mile jog before breakfast, just like at home. The zoo's landscape was a strange mix of natural calm and controlled wilderness. That morning, a maintenance check had delayed some operations. Workers had opened a service gate near the chalet, but the icy latch hadn't fully engaged. A worker, distracted by a call, left without confirming it was secure. The gate's interlock, meant to re-engage, failed. Around 7 a.m., Camille stepped outside for her run, unaware of the danger that lurked just beyond the gate. I can't forget the image. A jogger, wolves emerging from the trees, low to the ground. It was a Sunday morning, early in the summer of 2011. Camille, a 36-year-old woman, had travelled from her home in Versailles to visit her parents in the small town of Thury, France. She decided to go for a run in the surrounding woods, something she often did to clear her head. The route she chose took her along the perimeter of the Thury Zoo Safari. She passed several warning signs, but they were angled away from her approach. She likely assumed the path looped safely back. By 7:20 a.m., she was nearly half a mile in, the road dipping slightly, flanked by pine trunks and open brush. Unknowingly, she crossed into the wolf enclos. The wolves had been fed the previous evening, but remained alert and active after the cold night. 3 of them, the dominant male and 2 subordinates, were near the northern edge, restless from the scent of human movement. From the observation tower, a zookeeper noticed the lone jogger. He radioed for confirmation that the route was clear. Seconds later, he realized she was inside the enclos. He shouted into the radio for a patrol, but before the words were answered, movement broke the calm below. At first, the wolves didn't charge. They emerged from the trees, low to the ground, tails stiff, heads aligned. Camille slowed, confused by their presence, but not immediately panicked. She'd seen them before behind fences and thought the barrier must be nearby. When they began advancing in a slow, deliberate arc, the shift in posture made her freeze. She turned, saw the empty stretch of gravel behind her, and started jogging back, faster this time. The wolves matched her pace, then accelerated, paws thudding against the dirt. She broke into a sprint. The zookeeper, watching from above, saw Camille glance back once at the wolves. Near a drainage trench, her foot caught on the uneven gravel, and she fell forward, hitting hard. Before she could push herself up, the lead wolf clamped down on her right thigh, pulling backward with a violent jerk. She twisted, trying to kick free, but another wolf lunged at her shoulder. Her scream carried across the enclosure, high and ragged. The zookeeper in the tower sounded the alarm and radioed the rangers. The response vehicle was rerouted around the inner fence lines, delaying arrival to just under 10 minutes. Within normal range for a keeper-initiated emergency call, 2 more wolves joined, surrounding her as she tried to crawl toward the ditch. The lead wolf released and re-gripped higher, its teeth sinking into her hip. She struck out with her hands, scraping the gravel, trying to push herself forward. But one of the animals bit into her arm, shaking until it tore free. Within moments, she was on her back, thrashing as the pack pulled from opposite sides. She kicked weakly once more, then went still. Rangers arrived within 10 minutes in a vehicle. They found the wolves clustered over Camille's body, heads low and jaws working. Warning shots sent the pack scattering into the trees. 2 rangers approached as another called for a tranquilizer team. Camille lay on her side, clothing torn, deep bites from shoulder to thigh. One ranger checked for a pulse and found none. They covered her with a thermal blanket and secured the area until all 5 wolves were sedated. Ashley was constantly seeking unique photo opportunities for her personal memories. Having grown up taking pictures at every family vacation and special event, her phone was filled with daredevil shots from cliff edges, abandoned buildings, and extreme sports activities that showcased her fearless personality to friends and family. Ashley had grown up in suburban Dallas as the youngest of 3 sisters, developing a competitive streak that drove her to constantly push boundaries and seek attention through increasingly dramatic stunts. Her psychology major at Texas Tech University had given her confidence in reading people and situations, but her academic knowledge didn't extend to understanding animal behavior. That afternoon, Ashley and Jacob paid the sanctuary's fee for a close encounter experience that promised visitors the chance to observe big cats during feeding demonstrations and educational presentations. The facility operated in a legal grey area, offering interactions that legitimate zoos and accredited sanctuaries would never permit. African lions are apex predators that retain all their wild instincts regardless of human contact or hand-rearing. Adult males can weigh up to 420 pounds and possess incredible strength, speed, and territorial behaviors that make them extremely dangerous in captivity. Lions are social animals with complex hierarchies, but they view humans as either threats to be eliminated or prey to be consumed. Their powerful jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 650 pounds per square inch, while their razor-sharp claws can inflict fatal wounds with a single swipe. I've seen the photos, of course, the ones taken just moments before everything went wrong. The woman smiling, blissfully unaware. The massive lion, seemingly calm, but with a subtle shift in its eyes, a twitch of its tail that betrayed the predator within. It's a chilling reminder that even in the most controlled environments, the wild remains. I remember reading about Ashley, the young woman who thought she could get that ultimate photo. She was visiting a sanctuary, drawn in by the stories of rescued animals, especially Caesar, the 400-pound African lion. The sanctuary owner was leading the tour, sharing what turned out to be somewhat questionable tales of animal rescues. Caesar, who'd been hand-raised from a cub, seemed remarkably docile. As the tour ended, Ashley saw her chance. She asked Jake to distract the owner while she climbed into Caesar's enclosure for a selfie. Jake kept the owner busy. Ashley quietly approached Caesar, climbing over the 4-foot chain-link fence. The lion, about 10 feet away, watched her. His golden eyes followed her, but he didn't seem aggressive. Ashley crouched down, phone in hand, ready to capture the moment. But as she moved closer, Caesar changed. His ears flattened. His tail twitched faster. Then, with explosive suddenness, his predatory instincts took over. Millions of years of evolution kicked in, recognizing Ashley as prey in his territory. He launched himself at her with incredible speed. Her phone flew away as Caesar's paws struck her chest, knocking her to the ground. His claws tore into her torso and shoulders. His jaws clamped down on her neck, his canine teeth piercing through muscle and bone. Caesar's territorial aggression drove him to continue the attack, claws raking, bite crushing. Ashley grew weaker, blood loss and spinal trauma overwhelming her. Jake's screams brought the owner running, but Caesar's posture over his kill made intervention too dangerous. Within minutes, Ashley was gone. Emergency responders arrived, but it was too late. The investigation revealed the facility lacked proper permits and insurance, violating safety regulations. Caesar was moved to an accredited sanctuary. Ashley's death devastated her family. Her university implemented enhanced safety education for traveling students. The incident led to stricter regulations for exotic animal facilities and better enforcement of safety laws in Oklahoma. Then there was Giovanni Russo, May 21, 2018, in Grand Paradiso National Park, northern Italy. A small expedition of 4 had finished dinner, leaving a food bag unsealed. Giovanni, a certified alpine guide, had worked those slopes for over a decade, leading trekking tours with his wife, Eleanor. He knew when to turn back and when to press on. The Grand Paradiso region had become a focus for conservation, with wolves returning after decades. Giovanni respected them, saw himself as part of the balance. His company specialized in remote routes with minimal disturbance, and he often told clients that predators avoided people. That weekend's trek was routine, a mild ascent to a campsite near the Meadow of Almany. His clients, a couple from Milan, had little backcountry experience. They trusted Giovanni completely. That night, someone left a pack of trail mix open near the fire, and dinner scraps were tossed nearby. The wolves in that region averaged 60 to 70 pounds, lean and grey. Usually nocturnal, they hunted deer in packs. But recently, rangers had seen younger wolves venturing closer to human camps, especially when food was accessible. Just before dawn, around 4 a.m., Eleanor woke to rustling near the cooking area. Then a faint, low growl. She thought it was a fox until she saw silhouettes clustered around the fire pit, where the torn food bag lay open. She whispered for Giovanni, who grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside. He walked towards the food zone. The flashlight beam caught 3 wolves standing over the wrappers and crumbs. He shouted and waved, but they didn't scatter. One stepped forward, hackles raised. Giovanni shouted again, clapping as he closed the distance. The older female lunged, nipping at his forearm. Giovanni jerked back, but a younger wolf followed through, clamping down near his elbow. The bite struck deep, severing tissue. He fell backward, blood pulsing from his injuries. The wolves held their ground, circling the food. Eleanor ran from the tent with a burning stick. I've always found that the most tragic stories are the ones that could have been avoided. In Italy, a man named Giovanni died because wolves were feeding near unsecured rations. A freak accident, they called it, a twist at the wrong moment. But it was an accident rooted in negligence. Now I'm reminded of another tragedy, this one unfolding in the vast mangrove delta of the Sundarbans National Park in West Bengal, India, on July 15, 2016. The Lawson family arrived, ready for an adventure. But what awaited them was something far more sinister. The Sundarbans, a maze of tidal channels and dense vegetation where the Ganges meets the Bay of Bengal. Ancient mangrove trees rise from the brackish water, their aerial roots creating an impenetrable network. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but also one of the world's most dangerous ecosystems. Saltwater crocodiles lurk beneath the surface. Venomous snakes coil in the canopy. Genevieve Lawson, a 42-year-old real estate agent from London, had booked the most expensive boat tour. She was demanding, unwilling to accept limitations. She berated their local guide, Ravi, multiple times during the morning briefing, while her husband, David, tried to moderate her behavior. Their teenage children, Emma and Jake, watched uncomfortably as their mother dismissed every safety warning. Ravi, with 15 years of experience in those treacherous waters, found himself intimidated by Genevieve's constant threats and demands for closer wildlife encounters. The boat had safety barriers to keep tourists safe, but Genevieve viewed these precautions as obstacles. She wanted those authentic jungle photographs. The Sundarbans are the exclusive hunting ground for the world's largest population of Bengal tigers. These aren't just any tigers. They're exceptional swimmers, uniquely adapted to this aquatic environment, and have developed an unusual willingness to hunt humans in water. They can weigh up to 400 pounds, measure over 10 feet in length, and possess 4-inch canine teeth capable of crushing windpipes. Their orange coat with black stripes provides perfect camouflage among the shadows of the mangrove forest. During the afternoon tour, their boat approached a narrow channel where Ravi spotted fresh tiger tracks. He cut the engine and whispered for complete silence, explaining that a large male tiger had recently passed through the area. But Genevieve, frustrated with the distance, declared she needed closer photographs. Against all protests, she stepped over the safety barrier and lowered herself into the chest-deep channel water, camera held high. Then the tiger began its drowning technique, pulling her backward into deeper water while maintaining its crew. I've seen what hunger can do, how it can blur the lines of instinct and desperation. In the remote forests of Primorsky Krai, eastern Russia, on November 15, 2016, a forestry worker named Nikolai Baronov experienced this firsthand. His last radio check-in was brief and routine, giving no hint that his route would end in silence and blood. Nikolai, 52, had dedicated most of his life to those forests. He lived alone near Dalna, managing patrols in the buffer zones near the Cody Allen Mountains. His work involved monitoring traps, logging boundaries, and poaching activity. That week, he was surveying a hunting reserve due to reports of wolves nearing villages. He preferred working alone, believing a second engine scared off wildlife. His assignment that day was simple: document animal tracks after the first full snow. Wolves had become increasingly active, driven from higher ground after a wild boar decline. These wolves could travel up to 20 miles in a single night. Locals had warned of animals following sled trails at dusk, warnings Nikolai heard that morning, but didn't heed. He checked his flare gun, but left his rifle behind, citing its weight. By noon, the weather shifted rapidly, with gusting snow and low visibility. His supervisor's radio attempts went unanswered, attributed to battery failure. When evening arrived and Nikolai hadn't returned, Yevgen, a neighbouring ranger and longtime friend, set out to follow his route. Around 5 p.m, Yevgen rode out with a flashlight and a sidearm. The tracks led north, stopping abruptly about 800 meters from the ridge. Nikolai's snowmobile was half buried in snow, its headlight dimly lit. The scene indicated Nikolai had dismounted, possibly to clear ice. Paw prints, deep and overlapping, circled the area. Drag lines marked the snow. The circle tightened. Yevgen later described the scene as a sequence of struggle. Human footprints turned erratic, moving backward. A snapped branch and a torn glove lay nearby. A smear of blood marked the snowmobile's side panel. Beyond, the snow showed clear impressions of multiple bodies pressing down. Wolves and man. They likely approached silently, using the snow and wind as cover. Initial bites were to the legs, pulling him down. Blood spray indicated arterial injury. Bite patterns suggested coordinated restraint from multiple angles. His jacket was shredded, revealing where one animal had clamped onto his back, while another tore at his neck. Boot prints ended, replaced by drag marks. Yevgen followed cautiously, revolver drawn, through the unnervingly still forest. He found the body 30 meters downhill near a frozen stream. The snow was flattened and red. The wolves had likely fed briefly before retreating. Later investigations revealed at least 4 wolves, 2 adults and 2 juveniles. Yevgen radioed the base immediately. It took nearly an hour for a snow vehicle to arrive. The men lifted the body onto a tarp, careful not to disturb the bite patterns. The stench of blood lingered, even in the cold. The pack didn't return, but distant howls echoed as the rescuers secured the area. Nikolai's remains were taken to Dalna. The autopsy confirmed catastrophic blood loss and crushing trauma to the neck. The official report cited predatory behavior exacerbated by winter scarcity and a decline in prey density. The incident received a brief mention on regional news, framed as a tragic encounter. There are creatures in Florida that have remained virtually unchanged for over 200 million years. Apex predators perfectly adapted as ambush hunters in aquatic environments. Adult males can reach lengths of 14 feet, weighing over 1,000 pounds. Their jaw muscles can exert over 3,000 pounds of pres per square inch. I remember reading about Walt, who moved to Florida after selling his plumbing business. He was drawn by the promise of year-round golf, fishing, and outdoor living, something impossible during Ohio's harsh winters. He bought a modest ranch home with direct water access, complete with a private dock. He could fish and feed the ducks that became regular visitors. Walt's evening routine often involved sitting on his patio with a cold beer, watching the sunset reflect off the calm water as he tossed breadcrumbs to the waterfowl. The Sunset Lakes community had been built on reclaimed wetlands. Developers created an elaborate system of retention ponds and canals to manage stormwater runoff while providing attractive water features for residents. The artificial waterways were connected to natural creek systems that flowed into Tampa Bay. This created corridors that allowed wildlife to move freely between developed and undeveloped areas. Recent heavy rains had raised water levels throughout the region, bringing increased wildlife activity to residential areas. Walt had noticed more alligators in the community's waters over the past few months. But, like most Florida residents, he had learned to coexist with the reptiles. Walt's regular duck feeding had inadvertently created a reliable food source that attracted waterfowl from throughout the area. Alligators are opportunistic feeders. They will consume any animal they can overpower, including birds, fish, mammals, and occasionally humans who venture too close to their territory. One evening, Walt was relaxing on his patio when he noticed that his favorite fishing lure had become tangled in the vegetation near his dock. Walt waded into the knee-deep water near his dock, using a long-handled net to try to free the snagged lure from the underwater vegetation. He had performed similar retrievals many times over the past 5 years without incident, confident that the shallow water near his property was safe for brief wading. The attack came from directly beneath Walt as he stood in the canal, focused on retrieving his lure. A 12-foot male alligator, submerged motionless near the dock for over an hour, waiting for ducks to approach the feeding area, exploded upward with devastating force. The massive reptile's jaws clamped down on Walt's right leg with bone-crushing power. Its 3,000 pounds of bite press instantly fractured the femur and severed major arteries. The alligator immediately initiated his signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining his grip on Walt's leg. The violent rotation dislocated Walt's hip and pulled him fully into the canal, where the gator's natural advantages became overwhelming. The 12-foot alligator dragged Walt toward the deeper center of the canal, where its superior swimming ability and underwater endurance made escape impossible. Within minutes, Walt's movements ceased as drowning and massive blood loss overwhelmed his system. Emergency responders arrived within 10 minutes of Margaret's call, but the alligator had already retreated to the deeper water with Walt's body. Police and wildlife officers worked through the night to locate and capture the massive reptile, using specialized equipment and trained personnel to safely extract both the alligator and Walt's remains from the canal. The investigation revealed that Walt's regular duck feeding had inadvertently attracted the large alligator to his property, creating a dangerous situation that culminated in the fatal attack. Walt's death prompted immediate changes to the Sunset Lakes community's water safety protocols, including the installation of warning signs around all retention ponds and canals. It was September 8, 2014, and the vast wetlands of the Florida Everglades stretched endlessly under the blazing afternoon sun. Sawgrass prairies and cypress swamps teemed with some of America's most dangerous wildlife. The remote waterways near Tamiami Trail buzzed with the activity of airboat tours, carrying tourists deep into alligator territory, where massive reptiles basked on mudbanks and hunted in the dark water channels. Michael Chen, a 35-year-old software engineer from Seattle, was experiencing his first visit to Florida as part of a cross-country road trip to celebrate his recent promotion. Michael had always been fascinated by technology and outdoor adventure, spending his weekends hiking in the Pacific Northwest Mountains. His engineering background had given him confidence in analyzing risks and solving problems. But his experience with dangerous wildlife was limited to black bears and mountain lions that could be avoided through proper precautions. Michael had grown up in urban Seattle, developing his love of nature through weekend camping trips with his father and uncle. He was excited to capture images of such an impressive wild animal to show his colleagues back home. But his enthusiasm overcame his caution as he leaned farther over the boat's edge to get closer shots. The fatal moment came when Michael's phone slipped from his grip, falling toward the dark water. Without thinking, Michael lunged forward, desperately trying to catch his expensive device before it disappeared into the swamp. The massive alligator had been patiently monitoring the boat. Michael's sudden movement triggered an immediate attack response. The 800-pound reptile exploded from the mudbank with terrifying speed. Its powerful tail propelled it through the water like a missile, aimed directly at Michael's exposed position. The alligator's massive jaws clamped down on Michael's outstretched arm with bone-crushing force. 3,000 pounds of bite press instantly shattered bones and severed major arteries. Michael's scream of shock and pain echoed across the swamp as the reptile's momentum pulled him completely over the side of the airboat and into the murky water. The tour guide and other passengers grabbed desperately at Michael's legs, trying to pull him back into the boat while the alligator maintained its crushing grip. The alligator immediately began its signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining its devastating grip. Michael's struggles grew weaker as the combination of massive blood loss, crushing injuries, and drowning overwhelmed his body. The alligator's grip never loosened as it continued the death roll with mechanical precision, each rotation causing additional trauma, while ensuring its prey could not escape. Within minutes, Michael's movement ceased as the alligator's brutal assault proved fatal. The massive reptile dragged his body into deeper water, where it disappeared beneath the surface with its kill. Emergency responders arrived within the hour, but Michael's body wasn't recovered until the following day, when wildlife officials located the massive alligator and retrieved the remains. The tour company immediately implemented physical barriers around all passenger seating areas and enhanced safety briefings for future tours. Michael's death prompted his family to advocate for stricter safety regulations in the wildlife tourism industry. The incident highlighted the deadly consequences of ignoring safety warnings around apex predators and became a cautionary tale about the dangers of prioritizing photography over personal safety. It was July 8, 2017, and Detroit's summer heat shimmered off abandoned lots as Maria Santos loaded her car with dog food and water. At 28, she'd spent 5 years walking dogs by day and feeding Detroit's feral populations by night. What she didn't realize was that pack dynamics had shifted with the addition of 3 new dogs, animals that saw humans not as providers, but as competitors. Alpha emerged from the shadows first, his 80-pound frame moving with predatory grace. Behind him came the others, a scarred pit bull mix, 2 smaller dogs, and 3 newcomers whose breeds were impossible to determine. Their eyes reflected the dim streetlight like mirrors. Maria began distributing food as always, tossing handfuls of kibble in different directions to prevent fighting. But tonight, the strategy backfired. Instead of dispersing to eat, the dogs began to close in. I've seen what happens when pack instincts take over, when the lines between domesticity and wildness blur. It's a primal shift, and the consequences can be devastating. I remember reading about Maria, a woman who fed a pack of stray dogs in an abandoned neighborhood. She thought she was helping them, but one day everything changed. The dogs, 6 of them, surrounded her. When 2 smaller ones started fighting over food, Maria stepped in to break it up. That was her fatal mistake. In that instant, Alpha, the leader, saw her not as a provider, but as competition. His lips curled back, and he attacked. The other dogs joined in, their pack mentality overriding any memory of her kindness. They dragged her deeper into the lot, their coordinated attack speaking to generations of predatory instincts. They weren't pets anymore. They were wild animals, and Maria was their prey. Her screams went unanswered, swallowed by the empty houses. By the time they backed away, she was gone. It took 3 days to capture them. They were euthanized, their wild nature deemed impossible to rehabilitate. It reminds me of another story, one that unfolded at the Namba Island Chimpanzee Sanctuary in Uganda. On September 8, 2015, Kendra Sullivan, a wildlife photographer, arrived, commissioned to document the rehabilitation of rescued chimpanzees. The sanctuary, a 100-acre forested island on Lake Victoria, was home to 49 chimps, many traumatized by poaching. Despite being rescued, they retained all the instincts and physical capabilities of their wild counterparts. Kendra, known for her fearless approach, believed her experience with domestic animals gave her an understanding that transcended species. She dismissed safety briefings and demanded access to restricted areas. Dr. James Mukasa, the sanctuary's director, grew increasingly concerned. Peter Sally, a caretaker, warned her about the unpredictable nature of the animals. Chimpanzees, after all, are incredibly powerful, 5 times stronger than an adult human, with a grip strength that can crush bones. One afternoon, frustrated by the viewing restrictions, Kendra noticed an unlocked gate leading to a maintenance corridor, a direct access point to the chimpanzee's living area. Despite the warnings, she slipped away, confident in her animal handling skills. That corridor brought her face to face with Boso, the sanctuary's dominant male, a 150-pound adult rescued as an infant. He was known to be aggressive towards unfamiliar humans. Boso, resting near the barrier, immediately became agitated by Kendra's intrusion into his territory. When she raised her camera to photograph him, he interpreted it as a challenge. His response was immediate. He lunged, grabbing her extended arm with crushing force. I've read stories about chimpanzees inflicting terrible injuries, but one detail always stays with me. They instinctively target faces, hands, and genitals to inflict maximum damage. It's a chilling insight into the raw, strategic nature of aggression. I remember reading about a woman named Kendra who experienced this firsthand. She was attacked by a chimpanzee named Boso, and the details are harrowing. The chimp, with canine teeth over 2 inches long, initially fractured her forearm with a force of 300 pounds per square inch. He pulled her against the barrier, and for nearly 2 minutes he bit and clawed at her face, neck, and upper body. His jaws crushed facial bones, tore away skin and muscle, and severed major blood vessels. Her attempts to defend herself were futile. Her free hand was severely mutilated, several fingers crushed by Boso's powerful jaws. Peter Suley, hearing her screams, used high-press water hoses to drive Boso away. But by then, Kendra had suffered catastrophic injuries. The massive blood loss and shock proved fatal within minutes. She died before emergency services could even reach her. The investigation that followed focused on security failures. It makes me think of other times when humans have encountered wild animals with tragic consequences. I recall another incident from February 9, 2014, near Langer, Saskatchewan. It was a seemingly routine trip into the northern boreal forest for 2 men, David Lasky and his cousin Jeff. David, a part-time wildlife photographer, often ventured into the woods to track animal behavior. His cousin Jeff often joined him. That day, they were heading out to check a set of cameras he'd left by a frozen creek north of Waskew Lake. They knew wolves were in the area, but believed they avoided humans. The plan was simple: a 2-hour snowmobile ride, a short hike to the cameras, and back before dusk. The wolves in that region were typically grey, thick-coated animals, averaging about 90 pounds, moving in family groups. They relied on coordination, silent pursuit, and strategic circling, focusing on deer and moose along the forest edges. The men dressed warmly and carried only a single red flare for safety. By 9:30 a.m., they parked their snowmobile and began walking the last half mile through packed snow. At first, everything was normal. They reached the first camera and swapped the SD card. Around 10:15, as they crossed the creek, Jeff slipped on a patch of ice. David crouched to help him up. That's when they noticed movement among the tree line across the creek. The animals stood still at first, only their eyes catching light. Jeff straightened and waved his arms, shouting to scare them off. But the wolves didn't run. Unbeknownst to the men, a freshly killed deer lay half buried in the snow nearby, a cached carcass the wolves were defending. They began to fan out slowly, forming a loose semicircle. David muttered that they were just curious, that noise would drive them away. But even as he spoke, one of the wolves lowered its head and started advancing. The men began backing up the slope toward their snowmobile, moving quickly, but without turning. The wolves followed, quiet and steady. Then the first lunge came. A grey blur across the ice, jaws clamping onto the back of David's leg. The impact drove him face first into the snow. Jeff spun and reached for the flare, but his gloves fumbled with the cap. 2 more wolves broke from the trees, bounding fast. David tried to kick free, leaving streaks of blood against the snow. He managed to roll onto his back and swing an arm, hitting one wolf across the muzzle with his camera bag, but another struck from the side, teeth finding his shoulder. Jeff finally snapped the flare to life, the red flame hissing. He swung it toward the animals. One wolf snarled and darted back, fur singed along its flank, but the others held ground. David was on his knees now, one hand pressed to his thigh, blood pumping dark and fast through his fingers. He tried to rise, but his leg gave out beneath him. Jeff charged forward with the flare, yelling, waving it more aggressively. The heat drove them back momentarily, circling just out of reach. David slumped sideways. I still think about that report sometimes. The official cause of death was exsanguination from femoral artery trauma, consistent with large animal bites. It was wolves. They trapped the pack later, relocated them to a remote management zone north of Reindeer Lake. Jeff had swung a burning flare, trying to keep them back, but the wound was too deep. His cousin David was gone in a minute. The authorities arrived about 40 minutes later by snowmobile, finding Jeff shaking uncontrollably beside the body. I can only imagine what he was feeling. The wildlife biologists suggested the wolves hadn't been actively hunting, just defending a food cache. But the distinction, well, it mattered little to those who saw what was left. Then, just a few months later, December 9th, 2018, a hillside community in suburban Los Angeles. Canyon Vista. It was an unusually warm winter evening. The residential development was built where urban sprawl met the wild chaparral of the Santa Monica Mountains. A 16-year-old Kevin Chen was running late after basketball practice. He took his usual shortcut through an undeveloped lot, rather than the longer route along the main road. Honor student, star athlete, promising college prospect. His home backed up against the natural open space. He often used those informal trails and vacant lots. Never any problems in 4 years. But the Canyon Vista area had been experiencing increased wildlife activity after the wildfires. They'd displaced numerous predators, forcing them into new territories, new food sources. Local authorities had issued warnings about mountain lion sightings, but most residents saw them as routine. Kevin knew about the warnings, but had never encountered any dangerous animals on those trails. He carried his basketball gear in a backpack, confident in his familiarity with the terrain, his athletic ability. Mountain lions are solitary predators, needing large territories. Adult males can control ranges of up to 100 square miles. Juvenile males are particularly dangerous as they establish new territories, sometimes more aggressive than experienced adults. They're less skilled at hunting natural prey and might target easier victims. Domestic animals, sometimes even humans. They're capable of incredible stealth, stalking prey for extended periods before attacking from close range. As Kevin jogged through the overgrown vacant lot, an 80 lb juvenile male mountain lion was using the area as a hunting ground. He'd been displaced from his natal territory by an older male, desperately seeking new hunting grounds. He'd been stalking Kevin for several hundred yards, moving silently through the dense brush, staying downwind. Kevin's size, his movement, the fact that he was alone and vulnerable triggered the cat's hunting instincts. The attack came from behind as Kevin moved through a dense section of chaparral. The 80 lb mountain lion launched himself from the brush, landing on Kevin's back. The impact drove Kevin face first into the rocky ground. The cat's claws found purchase in his shoulders and back. The mountain lion's jaws clamped down on the back of Kevin's neck, his canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae, targeting the spinal cord. Kevin tried to fight back with his backpack, but it was no use. The mountain lion's claws raked across Kevin's shoulders and torso, opening deep gashes. Kevin's screams echoed through the hillside community, alerting residents. Homeowners called 911, trying to find him. The dense vegetation made it difficult. The mountain lion continued his attack for several minutes, driven by predatory instincts. Police and paramedics arrived within 10 minutes of the first call, using Kevin's cries to locate him in the brush. I've always been drawn to the intersection of human ambition and the raw power of the natural world. The stories where those lines blur, sometimes with devastating consequences, stay with me. I remember reading about a man named Brandon Walsh. He was a personal trainer from Houston, and he paid a high price for a photo session with a Bengal tiger. It happened on November 3, 2015, at the Loner Exotic Ranch in East Texas. The ranch sprawled across 300 acres, a place where wealthy clients paid for once-in-a-lifetime photo opportunities with dangerous predators. It operated in the shadows, offering interactions that no accredited zoo would ever permit. Brandon, a 27-year-old, had discovered the ranch through word of mouth. He was passionate about fitness and adventure, always seeking new challenges. He'd saved for months to afford this experience, seeing it as the ultimate test of his courage and confidence around dangerous animals. He had built his personal training business through dedication, helping clients overcome their fears and achieve seemingly impossible fitness goals. His success, perhaps, had made him overconfident. He paid the rancher's fee for a private photo session with Sasha, a 300-pound female Bengal tiger raised from a cub. The ranch owner, a former circus trainer, supervised, emphasizing the extreme dangers involved. Bengal tigers are among the world's most powerful predators, with adult females weighing up to 350 pounds. Their strength, speed, and hunting instincts remain sharp, regardless of human contact. They are solitary, territorial animals that can become extremely aggressive when their space is violated. Their jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 1,000 pounds per square inch, and their claws can grow up to 4 inches long. The photo session began with Brandon outside Sasha's enclosure, taking dramatic shots while maintaining a safe distance. But he quickly became frustrated, wanting closer contact for more dramatic photos. He convinced the ranch owner to allow him closer access, arguing that his physical conditioning and confident energy would keep the tiger calm. Against his better judgment, the owner agreed to let Brandon enter a smaller holding area adjacent to Sasha's main enclosure. This holding area was separated from Sasha's territory by only a chain-link barrier, bringing Brandon within arm's reach of the massive predator. He began posing for his camera, mounted on a tripod, and set to take photos automatically. His fatal mistake was crouching down next to the barrier and extending his hand towards Sasha, believing his confidence would demonstrate dominance over the apex predator. The tiger's ears flattened slightly, and her tail began twitching faster. Sasha's attack was swift and devastating. the moment Brandon moved to adjust his pose. The tiger's hunting instincts activated with explosive force. She launched herself at the barrier, her paws striking the chain-link fencing, her razor-sharp claws finding purchase on Brandon's extended arm. The tiger's incredible strength pulled Brandon against the barrier, while her powerful jaws snapped at his position through the fencing. Her claws raked across Brandon's arm and shoulder, opening deep gashes that immediately began bleeding profusely. Her crushing grip prevented any retreat. The ranch owner rushed to intervene, using emergency protocols to distract Sasha and force her to release Brandon. But the tiger's claws had already caused catastrophic damage, severing major arteries and causing massive blood loss that quickly overwhelmed his system. Brandon collapsed from shock and blood loss within minutes of the attack, his physical conditioning useless against injuries that no human could. I find myself often pondering the strange ways we try to control nature and how it can backfire. There was the case of Brandon, a fitness model who died from massive trauma and blood loss. It happened in less than 20 minutes after a bear attack, a bear named Sasha. The ranch where it happened was operating without permits or insurance, violating state regulations. Sasha was moved to a sanctuary, and the facility was shut down. Brandon's death prompted safety education about using wild animals as photo props. His family sued, claiming inadequate safety measures led to the tragedy. And then there's the story of Tommy Rodriguez, a puppy mill operator in Missouri. The details of his death still haunt me. It was August 19th, 2013, the air thick with heat and the stench of neglect on his remote property. At 45, Tommy had been running puppy mills for over a decade, but financial press forced him to cut corners, a decision that would ultimately cost him his life. His 20-acre property was a maze of makeshift kennels in converted sheds, housing nearly 80 dogs in various states of breeding and neglect. He specialized in popular breeds, selling them at high prices to unsuspecting buyers. But the real money came from the security side of his operation. 4 massive dogs patrolling the perimeter, 2 cane corsos, each weighing over 120 pounds, and 2 mastiff mixes tipping the scales at nearly 140 pounds. These weren't pets. They were weapons, acquired from a defunct fighting operation and trained to be aggressive. For months, financial press had been building. Veterinary bills, feed costs, and facility maintenance had eaten into profits. Increased scrutiny from animal welfare organizations had forced him to operate more carefully. But he'd been cutting back on everything: food, medical care, even basic maintenance. The guard dogs, once fed premium meat, had been reduced to scraps and cheap kibble. Tommy didn't understand that hungry guard dogs were exponentially more dangerous than well-fed ones. Hunger sharpened their predatory instincts, made them more territorial, and reduced their tolerance for human presence. The 4 animals that had once been content to patrol were now viewing everything on the property, including Tommy himself, as potential competition for scarce resources. The dogs had been showing signs of increased aggression for weeks. They'd begun fighting among themselves over food, marking territory more aggressively, and showing less deference to Tommy's commands. A smart operator would have recognized these warning signs, but Tommy was desperate, distracted, and dangerously overconfident. On that sweltering August night, Tommy made his final rounds of the property, checking on breeding females and security systems. It was past midnight, and the Missouri countryside was silent except for distant barking and the hum of inadequate ventilation fans. He carried a flashlight and a metal rod for moving aggressive animals, but his attention was focused on financial calculations rather than the danger lurking in the shadows. The guard dogs had been without food for 3 days, not by design, but because Tommy had been too busy dealing with a sick litter to maintain their feeding schedule. Their hunger had reached a critical point, where survival instincts overrode years of conditioning. They were no longer guard dogs protecting property. They were predators looking for their next meal. Tommy's mistake was approaching the area where he kept the guard dogs without proper precautions. The dogs worked with the coordination of experienced predators. Their attacks focused on disabling their prey rather than killing quickly. They had learned patience in their previous lives, and hunger had made them methodical in their violence. The assault continued for nearly 20 minutes, with the dogs taking turns feeding on Tommy while he was still alive. His struggles grew weaker as blood loss and shock took their toll, but the animals showed no mercy. They had been conditioned to view violence as normal, hunger as constant, and humans as either threats or food sources. By the time the dogs... I'll never forget reading about Tommy. He thought he could control nature, bend it to his will for profit. But in the end, the animals he exploited turned on him. It's a grim reminder that our actions have consequences, often in ways we least expect. Tommy's guard dogs, driven by hunger, consumed his body after he died near their feeding area. For 3 weeks, his remains went undiscovered as the other dogs, trapped in kennels, starved to death. The stench eventually led authorities to a scene of unimaginable horror. Tommy's remains were scattered, dozens of dogs were dead or dying, and the guard dogs were shot for their aggression. The investigation revealed the extent of his illegal puppy mill, breeding females in deplorable conditions, puppies dying from neglect, and the sale of sick animals across state lines. The surviving dogs were euthanized due to their condition. Tommy's death ended the puppy mill, but at a terrible cost. He became a victim of the very creatures he sought to control. Then there was Roberto Mendez. It was August 22nd, 2014, in the Cypress Point community, a luxury development built on reclaimed wetlands in Florida. Roberto, a landscaper, was working to maintain the grounds. He'd built his business from scratch, providing for his wife and 2 children. The development had artificial lakes connected to natural waterways, creating a habitat for wildlife. Roberto was familiar with Florida's wildlife, respecting the dangers they posed. That afternoon, while trimming bushes around a pond, his hedge trimmer fell into the water. He waded in to retrieve it, unaware of the danger lurking beneath the surface. American alligators are ambush predators, camouflaged and patient. Adult females can reach 10 feet in length and weigh up to 200 pounds, with incredible speed and power. They are most dangerous when protecting their territory. Their bite force exceeds 2,000 pounds per square inch, and they use a death roll to disorient and drown their prey. Roberto stepped into the pond, assuming it was safe. But a 10-foot female alligator, hidden among the vegetation, exploded into action, clamping her jaws on his right leg. The bite fractured his bones and severed arteries. The alligator initiated her death roll, pulling Roberto into the deeper water. His screams echoed across the manicured lawns. Her boyfriend, Brad Mitchell, watched uncomfortably as Tara screamed at the crew, dismissing their safety restrictions as pathetic. Captain Morrison, with 18 years of experience, had dealt with difficult clients before, but Tara's behavior was alarming. She demanded the protective cage be removed entirely, claiming she deserved unrestricted access to the sharks because she had paid a premium price. When Dr. Lisa Chen tried to explain the dangers, Tara dismissed her as jealous. Tara was convinced her graduate student status and booking fee entitled her to special treatment. She threatened to destroy the company's reputation online and file lawsuits if she didn't get the extreme experience she demanded. She even suggested the crew should enter the water first to test whether the sharks were dangerous. The waters around Neptune Islands are home to some of the largest great white sharks on Earth, apex predators that have ruled these seas for over 400 million years. These magnificent hunters can reach lengths of over 20 feet and weigh over 4,000 pounds. Their massive triangular heads house rows of razor-sharp serrated teeth, each measuring up to 3 inches in length, designed to slice through flesh and bone. Great whites possess the most powerful bite force of any living creature, capable of exerting over 4,000 pounds per square inch of crushing press. The crew had attracted several great white sharks using a carefully prepared chum mixture. Among them was a massive 18-foot female, estimated to weigh over 4,000 pounds, feeding aggressively on the bait. This enormous shark displayed classic hunting behaviors, circling the boat with calculated precision, investigating the steel diving cage. Before entering the water, Tara secretly loosened the connections on her diving regulator, planning to create a fake equipment malfunctions to justify exiting the protective cage. She believed she could manipulate the situation to get the unrestricted shark access she felt entitled to. Once submerged, Tara immediately signaled fake distress, pointing frantically at her sabotaged regulator. Captain Morrison initiated emergency procedures to bring her to the surface. But instead of ascending, Tara swam away from the cage toward the feeding sharks, believing her superior intelligence made her invulnerable. Her erratic swimming movements created the exact type of distressed prey behavior that triggers great white hunting instincts. The massive female great white detected Tara's panicked swimming immediately and abandoned the chum bait to investigate this new potential prey. The enormous predator approached from below at speeds exceeding 25 miles per hour. The shark's assault was swift and devastating. Rising from the depths like a living torpedo, the great white struck Tara from below with tremendous force, its massive jaws opening to reveal rows of gleaming serrated teeth. The impact drove Tara upward as the shark's jaws clamped down around her torso with bone-crushing press. The razor-sharp teeth sliced through her wetsuit and deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite force of 4,000 pounds per square inch shattered Tara's rib cage instantly, puncturing both lungs and severing major blood vessels. The shark's powerful jaw muscles continued applying press, while its head thrashed violently from side to side, the signature feeding behavior that allows great whites to tear away large chunks of flesh. The violent shaking motion severed Tara's body at the waist, separating her upper and lower torso. I've seen what these animals can do. The power in their jaws, the speed of their attacks. It's a primal force that can be unleashed in seconds. Sometimes, sadly, with catastrophic results. Take the case of Tara, who believed that money and demands could override natural predator behavior during a shark cage diving operation. Her belief proved fatally wrong. She deliberately sabotaged equipment and violated safety protocols. The investigation revealed that she died within seconds from massive blood loss, traumatic shock, and the complete destruction of vital organs, as massive amounts of blood clouded the surrounding water. The feeding behavior continued for several more seconds as the shark consumed portions of her body before disappearing into the depths. Her family, displaying the same entitled attitude that had led to her death, filed lawsuits against the tour company. Maritime authorities, at least, implemented stricter regulations for shark cage diving operations. Then there's the story of Harold Thompson, out in Alabama, on March 22, 2015. The sun beat down on his property, where barking echoed from kennels scattered across 5 acres of red dirt. At 71, Hank, as everyone called him, moved slowly between the enclos, carrying water with the confidence that came from 20 years of dog breeding. He and his wife Martha had built their operation from nothing, specializing in Rottweilers and German Shepherds. What had started as a hobby had grown into a modest business, with 8 breeding females and 3 males producing litters they sold across the southeast. But age, it seems, had made Hank careless about safety protocols. In his younger days, he never would have entered a kennel alone, especially with breeding males during territorial phases. But experience had bred overconfidence. The centerpiece of their operation was Brutus, a 130-pound Rottweiler whose massive frame made him their most sought-after stud. At 4 years old, he was in his prime, with a bloodline tracing back to German working dogs. His offspring commanded premium prices from buyers seeking protection animals. Recently, though, Brutus had been showing increased aggression. A minor injury to his left rear leg had left him limping and irritable, causing him to snap at Martha when she tried to examine the wound. The veterinarian had prescribed pain medication, but the dog's temperament had grown increasingly unpredictable. Martha had expressed concerns about Hank working alone with Brutus, especially given the dog's recent mood changes. But Hank dismissed her worries with stubborn confidence. He'd raised Brutus from a puppy and believed their bond was unbreakable. On that March afternoon, Martha had driven into town for supplies, leaving Hank alone with the dogs. The kennels needed cleaning, water bowls required filling, work Hank had done thousands of times before. Brutus watched from his kennel as Hank approached, the dog's dark eyes tracking every movement with intensity that should have served as warning. The animal was panting heavily despite the shade, his injured leg causing him to shift uncomfortably. Pain has a way of making even docile animals unpredictable, and Brutus was far from docile. Hank unlocked the kennel gate and stepped inside, bucket in hand, his attention focused on the dirty water bowl in the corner. He'd performed this routine hundreds of times. But today, Brutus was different. The dog's ears were pinned back, his tail held low, his massive body coiled with tension. As Hank bent down to clean the water bowl, his back turned to the dog. Brutus made his decision. There was no growling, no warning, just 130 pounds of muscle launching through the air with devastating force. The impact drove Hank face first into the concrete floor, his bucket clattering away as Brutus's jaws found their target. The dog's teeth sank deep into Hank's throat, crushing his windpipe and severing major blood vessels in a single catastrophic bite. Hank's hands clawed desperately at the animal's massive head, but Brutus had locked on with predatory determination. The dog's powerful neck muscles allowed him to shake violently, tearing through tissue and bone with mechanical efficiency. Hank's screams were cut short by the damage to his throat, replaced by a wet gurgling sound that grew weaker by the second. Blood pooled beneath his body as Brutus continued his attack, driven by instinct spread into his lineage for generations. The assault lasted less than 3 minutes, but the damage was irreversible. When Brutus finally released his grip, Hank lay motionless on the kennel floor, his life ebbing away in the Alabama heat. Martha returned home 2 hours later to find the property strangely quiet. She called out for Hank as she walked toward the kennels, but received no response. When she rounded the corner and saw Brutus standing guard over her husband's body, the full horror became clear. The dog's reaction to Martha's presence was immediate and threatening. He positioned himself between her and Hank's body, his lips pulled back in a snarl. Martha backed away slowly, dialing 911 from her truck. Sheriff's deputies arrived within 20 minutes, but Brutus refused to allow anyone near Hank's body. After consulting with animal control, the decision was made to shoot Brutus rather than risk additional casualties. The massive Rottweiler died with 3 bullets in his chest. The investigation concluded that Hank's death was a tragic accident caused by his failure to recognize warning signs of an aggressive injured animal. The breeding operation was shut down, the remaining dogs relocated, and Martha was left to grieve both her husband and the animal that had been part of their family. Then there's a completely different environment, a completely different predator. It was September 3rd, 2013, near the Toklet River in Denali National Park, Alaska. By early afternoon, the wind had dropped, and the landscape stood still, open and silent. From a distance, it looked calm, a place where nothing could happen quickly. But the quiet there was deceptive. Sarah Miller, 26, was an experienced backpacker from Anchorage. She was known for her... The last photos on her camera showed the river valley and a small group of wolves following a caribou herd in the distance. Just 6 minutes later, she was gone. I've spent years studying predator behavior, and piecing together what happened next in Denali based on the evidence is chilling. Sarah, the solo hiker, had moved off the main gravel bar, probably intending to cut inland. Rangers explained the findings to Sarah's parents, who asked that the park not punish what it protects. It was just a few weeks later, April 14th, 2018, when Monica Barrett arrived at Everglades National Park in Florida. It's one of the largest tropical wilderness areas in the United States. The vast wetland ecosystem stretches across 1.5 million acres of sawgrass marshes and shallow waterways. It's home to some of North America's most dangerous predators. The park's intricate network of channels creates the perfect habitat for massive American alligators. Monica Barrett, a 44-year-old divorce attorney from Miami, had booked a solo kayak tour to clear her head after a difficult custody case. She was known for her aggressive courtroom tactics, building her legal career on intimidating opponents. Her reputation for getting her way through sheer force of will had created a dangerous sense of entitlement. Tommy Rodriguez, a 52-year-old tour guide with over 20 years of experience, immediately recognized Monica as a problematic client during the morning safety briefing. She had interrupted his presentation. There are moments in my work when the weight of human error feels unbearable. The story of Monica in the Florida Everglades is one of those. She insisted her legal background made her somehow immune to the dangers, that she was smarter than the guides, even threatening lawsuits when they tried to end her safety. She dismissed the park ranger's warnings about alligator nesting season as government overreach. The consequences were devastating. Her visit coincided with the peak of alligator breeding season, a time when the males are fiercely territorial. Park officials restrict access to certain waterways then, posting warning signs throughout the most dangerous areas. American alligators, some reaching 14 feet and weighing over 1,000 pounds, are apex predators with one of the most powerful bite forces in the animal kingdom. Their jaws can exert over 3,000 pounds per square inch. Tommy, the tour guide, repeatedly warned everyone to stay within designated channels. Monica, however, became increasingly belligerent, accusing him of infringing on her rights and threatening legal action. Despite Tommy's efforts, she broke away from the group, paddling her kayak toward a restricted lagoon clearly marked with warning signs. She claimed she had every right to explore any area of the national park as a tax-paying citizen. That lagoon was a primary nesting area for a massive 12-foot bull alligator, a reptile weighing 800 pounds that had been actively defending his territory for 3 weeks. The presence of Monica's kayak triggered his most aggressive instincts. He detected the vibrations from her paddle strokes within seconds, launching himself from the water, his massive jaws clamping down on the front of her kayak. The impact capsized her instantly, throwing her into the murky water directly in front of the enraged reptile. As she struggled, disoriented and panicked, the alligator identified her as a threat. His jaws found purchase on her torso, his razor-sharp teeth puncturing her life jacket and her body. The crushing bite shattered ribs, punctured lungs, and severed major blood vessels. Then came the death roll, a violent spinning motion designed to disorient prey and cause massive internal trauma. The alligator rotated rapidly in the water, spinning Monica's body while maintaining his crushing grip. The violent rotation generated tremendous force, tearing muscles and causing catastrophic internal injuries. The death roll continued for over a minute, filling her punctured lungs with water, the crushing pressure preventing any possibility of breathing. Her shattered ribs ground against each other, causing additional internal bleeding. The combination of massive internal trauma, drowning, and blood loss proved fatal within minutes. Her struggles gradually ceased as the alligator continued its death roll. The massive reptile eventually released her lifeless body, which floated to the surface. Tommy radioed for emergency assistance, but rescue teams couldn't reach the remote lagoon in time. It was May 14th, 2017. On that same day, far away from Florida, in the ancient mountains of Great Smoky Mountains National Park, the late spring afternoon was perfect for hiking, sunlight filtering through the trees. Sarah Johnson, a 29-year-old registered nurse from Atlanta, was enjoying a weekend hiking trip with her fiancé, Tom. Sarah had always loved nature photography, carrying her camera on every outdoor adventure. Her medical background gave her a practical understanding of emergency situations, but her experience with dangerous wildlife was limited. Sarah had been hiking throughout the Southeast for over 5 years, building her confidence and wilderness skills. She worked long shifts at Grady Hospital's emergency department, and these mountain getaways provided essential stress relief. That afternoon, Sarah and Tom were hiking through a remote alpine meadow when they discovered something extraordinary: 2 black bear cubs playing in the tall grass, their mother nowhere to be seen. Sarah immediately recognized this as a once-in-a-lifetime photo opportunity. There's something particularly tragic about fatal encounters with wildlife, especially when they stem from a desire to capture a perfect moment. I remember reading about a woman named Sarah, who, during her engagement trip, found herself in just such a situation. It's a story that highlights the raw power of maternal instinct and the importance of respecting boundaries in the wild. Black bears, common as they are in North America, become forces to be reckoned with when they have cubs. A mother bear will attack without hesitation to protect her young, seeing any human nearby as a deadly threat. They are incredibly strong and fast, able to run up to 30 miles per hour through dense forests. Sarah, captivated, started photographing some adorable cubs, thinking she was at a safe distance. But her excitement grew, and she gradually moved closer, trying to get better shots. Her fiancé, Tom, repeatedly warned her to keep her distance and leave, but Sarah was the mother bear wasn't nearby. For almost 10 minutes, she documented the cubs' playful wrestling and tumbling. But Sarah made a fatal mistake. She positioned herself between the cubs and their escape route to the forest. As she moved for a better angle, she unknowingly blocked their path to safety. This triggered the mother bear's protective instincts. She'd been watching from the tree line. The charge was swift and terrifying. The 200-pound female covered the distance in seconds, her powerful legs driving her forward with surprising speed, her fury focused on eliminating the perceived threat. Sarah tried to run, but her foot caught on a log, and she fell, still clutching her camera. The mother bear reached her before she could get up, striking her with bone-crushing force. Her massive paw connected with Sarah's back, claws raking across her spine and shoulders, ribs shattering from the impact. The camera flew from her hand as the bear's weight pinned her to the ground. Her cries for help were silenced by the crushing prise on her chest. The mother bear's jaws clamped down on Sarah's neck, the bite fracturing vertebrae and severing vital arteries. The assault continued until the bear was certain the threat was gone. Within minutes, Sarah's movement ceased. The mother bear stayed near her body for several more minutes, ensuring the threat was neutralized before gathering her cubs and disappearing into the forest. Park rangers arrived over an hour later, responding to Tom's emergency call, but Sarah was already dead from massive trauma. The bear family was tracked but left undisturbed. Wildlife officials determined the mother had been acting within normal protective behaviors. Sarah's death devastated the hiking community and led to enhanced educational programs on wildlife safety and distance protocols. Her family established a foundation to promote wilderness safety education, ensuring her passion for conservation would continue through enhanced protection for both wildlife and outdoor enthusiasts.